All right. So instead of providing additional video on the hang technique, which you can find in the book, I thought I would just go through this real quickly just to kind of discuss the hang technique and some of the things that I've reflected on in the last year since publishing the book. For a long time prior to the book, it was noticeable, at least in my opinion, that a large number of female athletes, specifically, male as well sometimes, but female more so than others, uh, did a natural kind of hang technique where they took off and then everything went behind their body. And sometimes they over exaggerated it by like really arching their back and really reaching backwards and so on. And it really messed with their overall flight control and then their landing and so on. So after publishing the book, I saw a couple of different athletes jump at a meet, and my mind just started kind of racing as to like, why did she do that? Why did she look that way? Where did that come from? I listened to the coaching cues of the coach, and they didn't seem to really understand how to, properly help that athlete to regain control in flight. And they thought that the flight path was totally fine or the technique of the hang was fine. Yet these athletes were obviously losing control mid-flight, which then, like I said, kind of negatively impacted their landing. And so I'm sitting there and I'm watching and I'm listening, and it dawns on me that there has to be some reason, something built in, something mechanically, something that, a life experience or experiences that this athlete must have had to go to that, flight technique naturally. And so I started thinking about especially again, female athletes I've had in the past. And I started thinking about the ones that had the worst of the hang techniques that really arched and lost control and weren't able to really control themselves in that manner. But that's how they did it. That's just how they jumped. And I came across kind of like an astonishing, I guess, or surprising kind of revelation that other sports that these athletes had done, mainly in my personal opinion, being volleyball, uh, actually probably negatively impacted their like understanding of flight. And so I found that to be really, really interesting. And so I started kind of thinking a little bit more about where could other, strong arches like that occur where they're putting their arms and legs behind their body, preparing for that next part, which is the landing. And I thought of also like gymnastics, golf a little bit with how they swing. A lot of times a female swing looks very different from a male swing. It's like smoother and there's more purpose to it in my mind. I think a lot of guys muscle, and I'm not trying to make a general statement, but a lot of guys muscle their tee shots. And so again, like that kind of stood out to me. Cheer, a lot of athletes that are long and triple jumpers are phenomenal cheer athletes. Gymnastics as well, and volleyball as well. And then I thought about the field event of high jump as well in track and field itself. And so I started kind of thinking about all these different, personal experiences I had had with these athletes that performed kind of these uncontrolled hang techniques. And pretty much every one of them had done one of the sports that I mentioned, either in season with me, being the high jump, or, during their high school career or even previous to high school. And so a lot of those movement patterns had been kind of, learned, I guess. And so when this happens, when you notice that an athlete has a flight technique that is not controlled and you didn't teach them to do it that way, it's just kind of natural to them. Maybe they observed it so many times watching video or other jumpers that just became part of their kind of, natural tendency. When you see these things occur, we have to stand or step back and basically ask, why is that happening? And do I need to intervene? Now, there's going to be some kids that have terrible flight mechanics and some really ugly hang techniques, but they're able to control it and they're able to land properly and they're able to pull it all off. There's no need to intervene on those kids, those athletes. We can let them be. I have seen some of the ugliest flight paths or techniques in the air at the Olympic level, and we're talking gold medalists. And so, someone saw that and probably said to themselves, man, that's an ugly flight. But you know what? I'm not going to touch it because this athlete is able to pull it off. And I think that's probably one of the reasons they end up becoming gold medalists, if you will. So we got to step back. We have to address whether we should intervene or not. And then we need to start reflecting if we are going to intervene, like where did that movement come from? Why did it occur? What's going on with this athlete specifically? And what are my next steps to kind of help them? In my own personal instance, and you'll see some images in the book as well, but in my own personal instance, I started putting together a drill that used tall poles that were cemented into buckets, and and then these tall poles, I would put a bungee on top, and I would instruct the athletes to take off and jump and try to touch the bungee, with their head. In so doing, I put it up so high that they literally had to like jump where their body was almost like straight up and down in air. And what ended up happening in that situation is the athletes understood what it meant to have a tall body instead of being in this kind of like backward arched motion. And they also instantly understood what it meant to be more aware of their like spatial kind of, positioning to the sandpit. Because when you arch your back, a lot of times what happens in that I call it C curve or hang technique, if you do it overly archy, is your eyes go to the sky as well, and then you've lost spatial awareness of where you're at over the sandpit, and that also then affects the landing. Timing as well is a big issue when you do that. So uh, I put this, poles on the sides of the pit with a bungee connecting them, and they jumped up and they learned instantly how to keep their body tall. They felt more comfortable in their knowledge of where they were at in relation to the sandpit. And a lot of those athletes made phenomenal gains in their flight technique and overall control, with then their landings becoming that much better as well. So I think these natural hang techniques are going to be there no matter what. There's going to be other natural things athletes do that are not just hang techniques, but we need to kind of sit back and we need to address and we need to determine if we need to intervene. And then we need to reflect on where did that movement come from? Why are they doing it? And how am I going to help? Ultimately, is what it comes down to. And I know that I talked about the flight and landing in length in one of the chapters in the book, but I think that we need to go a little bit beyond the information that I provided, even beyond the jumping or takeoff assessments that were in an earlier chapter, and really determine again, where is that coming from? Do I need to intervene? Okay, so again, I hope that makes sense. You can take a look at the book update to see images of the drill I just spoke of. You can even use, and I don't have a picture of this, but you can even use pool noodles. Stand in a box at the side of the pit, hold a pool noodle up, and they have to try to hit it with their head. Same exact concept. If you don't want to go out and buy, buckets and cement tall poles and get a bungee like I did. So again, something to think about there. But just being more reflective, being open to, thinking outside the box and reflecting on each athlete individually and where things might have occurred or originated within them independently is a really, really big deal. So hopefully that makes sense. And hopefully if you are seeing some athletes that are, having some kind of tendencies, if you will, to do this kind of crazy arching and they lose control, that something like either the pool noodle or the high bungee will help. Good luck.